Justin Trudeau has already taken force off the table. He has refused to use the authority that he has. Now he is relying on the goodwill of the protesters to take down the barricades. That's not leadership. This is nothing more than phony resolve.
Welcome back to Question Period. So after weeks of blockades, will the pipeline protest issue reach a breaking point? How can the government avoid violence and end this? And what's the political cost of this? Meantime, 4 Conservative MPs, including the influential Michelle Rempel, have released something called the Buffalo Declaration, a 13-page manifesto that describes Alberta as a colony, and they argue it's culturally distinct, a resonant choice of words. They want big changes in things like equalization, or the threat of separatism might grow. Is this the first shot at an Alberta independence movement? What does it mean? Let's bring back the Scrum to get a response. Tanya McCharles is back, Bob Fife is back, Nick Nanos back, and so is our special guest, Pam Palmater. Great to have you all here. Let's just focus on pipelines for a second, Nick. The political costs of this stalemate, what are they for Justin Trudeau and for everybody?
The 2 big risks for Justin Trudeau, first of all, the economy. That the economy kind of takes a hit as a result of this, and that people pin it on what I'll say the dithering of Justin Trudeau. And the second risk relates to talk, not action. You know, that the Prime Minister says the right thing on a lot of these big issues, but nothing ever happens, and how the Indigenous file is an example of that.
You know what he needed? What Trudeau needed? He needed an emergency Zamboni driver goalie
to
come in and save the day on some of this.
Christopher Freeland?
Yeah. Right?
Look, I think he's coming across as a very weak leader. When this whole blockade started, he was in Africa, said very little. He came back and then said, "Okay, we've got to have patience. We've got to have dialogue." Nothing happened, and by Friday, I'm running out of patience. Let's have dialogue. For Sunday, nothing has happened. The economy is still being severely hurt by this. So he's coming across, in my view, as a weak leader. And on the other issues of reconciliation, he'd have more credibility if he wasn't fighting in the courts a Human Rights Commission that was denying proper care for First Nations children. If we didn't still have reservations living in dire poverty, and we have reservations where they still don't have drinking water, there's a lot of things that this government could do and it isn't doing for First Nations people.
Pam, what's the way forward here? Even for many people who have deep sympathy with the Wet'suwet'en and Hereditary Chiefs who support or don't support the pipeline, and those who do, this cannot continue like this. So what is the way forward?
Well, this is what Native people have been saying for decades now. We cannot continue like this. Everything's getting worse. And unfortunately, Canada hasn't paid attention. All political parties, federal and provincial. But now we're in a situation where Justin Trudeau needs to step up. He went to his usual, well, we'll just put, the Assembly of First Nations and some chiefs in a press conference. That'll make everything look good for us. They'll tell everyone to stand down. And that crashed miserably. Not only did it, isolate those people from their own people, and they were criticized, but it also showed that Justin Trudeau doesn't even have his old school go-to anymore, that he has to actually step on his own as a leader and engage in real negotiations, not try to play this out through the media. And so far, he hasn't engaged in those nation-to-nation negotiations, which are desperately needed on all sides.
Well, to be fair, actually, and Jody Wilson-Raybould pointed this out, whatever you might think of, her relationship with the government, she did point out that the government had taken big steps to actually deal with some of those broader issues, not just the services on welfare, child language, health, education, but the broader nation-to-nation self-governance issues. And they started that train down a different track, but in fact, according to Wilson-Raybould, that got derailed. It was all words, lofty rhetoric, or the wrong words and the wrong rhetoric, and didn't engage with First Nations leadership and empower them to decide who speaks for them.
All right, last thing on this, Nick, real quick. So Justin Trudeau's got to make some decisions. If the police come in and this ends violently, it's a bad thing for everybody. If this blockade goes on, it starts to sap his political capital. What is the way out here for him? Is this going to be something that, for him though, Nick, is this one of those political moments where his grand bargain that he came in, resource development, reconciliation, and environmentalism is collapsing?
I think the fact of the matter is he's going to have to take a hit on this because of the time that he's taken to respond, that the fact that there's been no real progress at least, and that Canadians want to put this to rest. So I think he's going to have to take his political lumps on this and hope that somehow something happens in order to take down the blockade.
Let's talk about the Buffalo Declaration. Can we talk about that? 4 MPs, including Michelle Rempel, who's very influential, released this. I don't know, is it a manifesto? Is it we want a fair deal for Alberta, echoing what Jason Kenney said? They want to change things like equalization. They talk about being culturally distinct. We're treated like a colony. What, is this a problem for the next leader, Bob? What do you make of this?
I find it a bit of a head shaker, to be honest. The Conservatives had an Alberta Prime Minister for 10 years, Stephen Harper. Alberta premiers have tended to punch above their weight. Peter Lougheed, Ralph Klein, Jason Kenney. The last leader was from Western Canada. The current leader, who's soon be leaving, is from Western Canada, Andrew Scheer. He increased the numbers. So what is this stuff that Western Canada is somehow getting screwed by Confederation? It makes no sense.
What do you make of it,
Well, coming from a province that considers itself pretty distinct, Newfoundland, I find it kind of also a head scratcher because many provinces consider themselves pretty distinct and always, we feel, put upon by Ottawa. But look, it echoes some themes that Stephen Harper brought himself to power on. The West wants in, we want more power, we want more say. Right? The famous firewall letter.
2001.
Yeah, maybe Michelle should run for the leadership of the Conservative Party and bring those ideas into a broader debate across the country for all Conservatives.
I guess I'm going to be the skunk at the party because I do think that this makes sense. Let's face it, the Conservatives won the last election in terms of the popular vote, right? From their perspective in Alberta, Saskatchewan, that the Federation is not working. Here's the other thing to watch out for. I'm sure there's some Alberta MPs in the Conservative caucus who are thinking, why are we in the Conservative Party anyways? How is the Conservative Party helping Alberta? And for them thinking, look at the Bloc Québécois. We have separatists in Alberta, and they have a chance to advocate specifically for separatists in Quebec. They can advocate for Quebec. And I'm sure there's some Albertan Conservatives thinking, why couldn't we think about having an Alberta party whose sole job and mission is to advocate for Alberta because they don't feel that they're cutting through?
They tried that before with the Reform Party, and it didn't work. So, and also, Alberta as an independent country, landlocked. Come on, give me a break.
I'm not saying that independence works, but I'm just saying as a strategy.
Pam, what do you make of this?
Well, it's so painfully ironic on so many levels that right now, while we're dealing with everything that's happening around the Wet'suwet'en and the failure to respect their rights, they're the ones also saying, remove the blockades, go in, send in the police, but oh, by the way, no one is respecting our rights. And to use the same kind of colonial language when they have done the exact same thing to Indigenous peoples in their country, one of the worst provinces. And hello, how about decimating all of the buffalo so that Indigenous peoples wouldn't be able to subsist for themselves? And so there's so many ironies here, but the worst one takes the cake. I mean, Alberta's always been amongst the top 3 or top 4 most wealthiest according to GDP provinces. So, this is really about politics. It really has nothing to do with any kind of credibility in the things that they're saying.
It's about pain. It's about economic pain that Alberta
and it's
is feeling.
It's a sign of real alienation and real pain.
Right,
When you
it's
start,
exactly
when you start
that.
talking about independence, you're crossing the line, you're being irresponsible. If you're supposed to be in mainland, and they are members of the official opposition, it's irresponsible to talk about independence. They should know better than. In fact, I understand Rempel didn't even tell the Conservative leadership she was coming out there and throwing this flamethrower.
It might be irresponsible, but we should not be dismissing how some people feel.
I get it.
Because people have legitimate concerns.
I agree. I think there's a real sign of anger and alienation. I get it. Maybe it's felt all over the country. But just last word on that, Nick, does this pose a problem for whoever is the next leader of that party?
It's a big problem for the next leader, who hypothetically could be Peter MacKay. And I think it's a problem for the Conservative Party. It's going to be a problem for the Federation.
All right, I got to leave it there. Again, we are still at a stalemate on that. We don't know the way out, but we gave it some analysis with Tonda, Bob, Nick, and Pam. Just great to have the 4 of you here. Great to have all of you watching, so concerned about the direction of our country, whatever side you're on in all this, and we will be back here in 7 short days. Thanks for watching.